There's a narrative that's permeated the Xenoblade series the past decade, and that is that of the games, Xenoblade Chronicles X has by far the weakest story. That is to say, if you play the Xenoblade games for the linear narrative, you will be disappointed, and I'm of two minds on this. On one hand, yeah, the game basically advertises itself on not being the same as the plot-driven numbered games. It's all about side quests, exploration, carving through the new frontier that is Mira, the quote-unquote main plot, purposefully taking a back seat as the game asks, demands, that you take the time to do other stuff that would just be extra goodies in any other Xenoblade game. So the statement, Xenoblade Chronicles X has the weakest story, is true if you limit your understanding of a game's story to just its main plot. And I think if you approach X's story that way, you're doing it a disservice, because by allowing yourself to get sucked into and invested in not just the main characters and events that shape the game's plot, but the background minutiae and evolution of its world, you find yourself witness to one of the most interesting and unique stories in the Xeno franchise. I'm going to assume that most of you are familiar with X, but for those of you who aren't, a light overview. Skip to this time code if unnecessary. Earth has been destroyed in a conflict between two alien powers, the Ganglion and the Ghosts, with humanity having to abandon their home and flee aboard numerous ships. One of those, the White Whale, is pursued by the Ghosts and crashes into a strange, unknown planet they go on to name Mira. You, or rather your avatar, who for simplicity's sake we'll just call Cross, are one of the White Whale's passengers recovered by Elma after the crash. In fact, you're the only passenger recovered after the crash. That's suspicious. After remembering enough to realise we don't remember anything, Elma takes us to the remnants of the White Whale, New Los Angeles. We join the military group Blade and begin working with Elma and her allies to search for the remaining pieces of the ship, especially the lifehold, where most of the passengers are kept. All the while trying to settle in and start a new life on this strange, alien planet humanity must now call home. A task proven especially difficult as Earth's destroyers find themselves in a very similar position. But fuck all that, we gotta go pick some flowers. One of the things that sets X apart from other Xenoblade games is the sort of decoupling of the main player character from the main protagonist. Because while you do get to create your own custom avatar, join the ranks of Blade and play humanity's savior, this isn't your story. If it is any one character's, it's Elma's. You can tell she's wearing red. Sorry, Rex. Telling the story in this way allows the game to do two things. One, by not focusing the main plot on your mute puppet and instead on actual characters with actual writing, it allows the game to have an actual plot with those actual characters, which then bring about interactions and drama and themes that don't need to account for the star player being an immortal brick wall who kinda just stands there, occasionally saying the most out-of-pocket shit on Mira. And two, by making the player not the star of this story, but part of an ensemble cast, it frees them up to then write their own by focusing on the exploration and side content. And here is where X's story really begins. Because X is a much more horizontal game than the Klaus trilogy, trying to tie everything that happens in it to a single theme is a bit more challenging. So I won't. Instead, I'm going to split this video into somewhat more distinct sections than usual, which still lead into and feed off of each other, but don't necessarily need to link in every single way, and can be examined in relative isolation. Kinda like this game in general compared to the wider franchise. As I've said before, exploration is the name of the game here, with arguably the real main marker of progress being how much of Mira you have surveyed. Part of completing your survey involves obvious things like expanding the map, investigating odd objects, defeating noticeable enemies, and, most fun of all, taking part in the game's hundreds of side quests. And when taken in their totality, you begin to see a very interesting meta-narrative begin to take shape. Namely, a question: How do you define humanity on Mira? And I'm not talking about that in the literal sense, at least not at this moment. No, I mean, do we define humanity as refugees or colonizers? Because as big a deal as Elma makes about having to play nice with the indigenous life of Mira, the actual reality of playing the game can be quite different. Practically every mission involves some kind of scripted fight with indigents whose territory you've just wandered into. Half the normal missions, which are generic quests taken at the Blade Terminal, essentially boil down to the local wildlife is being a pain in the arse, go kill them for us. And this is all before you get to the fundamental fact that this is an action RPG where you, completely of your own free will, have the power to just start mowing down continents worth of sheep, laying waste to countless ecosystems and, should you so choose, the literal guardian deity of the entire planet, Telethia the Endbringer. This is where I'd put the footage of me mowing down Telethia the Endbringer. If I fucking could! While I was making my way through DE, I went and saw the latest Bong Joon-ho film Mickey 17, and while I'm not going to say much about the film, go see it for yourself, it's a good one. What I will say is that it made it very awkward going back home and picking up my Switch to continue role-playing as the rising star of a paramilitary organization slaughtering waves of indigenous life in the name of expanding the frontier. And the thing is, I don't think this is necessarily ludonarrative dissonance at work. I think it's just narrative dissonance. Is that what I'm looking for? I don't know. But the important thing is the game itself is aware of this dilemma. Just as there are missions that have you walking over wildlife without a second thought, there are those where the necessity of this is called into question, where you are given the choice to just plow straight through the Miran ecosystem, or ask yourself, is it really necessary for me to kill these babies? Yes it is. Kill the babies. If you don't, they literally come back and kill everyone else. Kill the babies. Part of the reason Lau goes off the deep end is his disappointment that the worst of humanity still managed to survive the destruction of Earth. But that's the other wrinkle, isn't it? The context that this isn't just a targeted planet that a spacefaring humanity chose to colonize out of material greed. Mira is a planet they crashed onto after being forced to leave Earth as it was caught in the middle of an interstellar war before being hunted down and attacked by one of the parties of said war. Viewing humanity on Mira as a band of refugees leads to a lot of interesting developments, and not just because this is the viewpoint the story tends to default to, though like I said, it doesn't ignore the other. You have the obvious stuff like the longing for a home that can never be returned to, the struggle to adapt to a new way of life. And you also have the immigration of other alien refugees into NLA, some of whom arrive as a result of the main plot, but a fair amount, the Orpheans, Zarubogon, even the ganglion refugees like the Prone and the Definians, are races you as Cross actively have to seek out and make the effort to connect with them. By taking the time to reach out to these other races and solve their problems like any other human, NLA eventually becomes this extraterrestrial melting pot, a mosaic of different peoples and cultures from across the stars, all living and working together. The man on ship becomes one of the city's most iconic landmarks. You can see xenoforms hanging around the city, interacting with each other in different quest lines. It's amazing how normal and natural it all becomes. You have your tensions, of course. My favourite is the questline where you accidentally get the Manon hooked on pizza, which leads to them overwhelming the local pizza joint to such a degree that the wife of the owner kills herself from the stress, leading the owner to begin plotting vengeance against the Manon. God, this game is so unserious. But there is no doubt that all this immigration to NLA is not just beneficial to those species, to humanity, but key to the very survival of Mira's life, native or not. All of this is stuff the game doesn't overtly push through its main story. It's like an undercurrent. But by diving into said current, into the game's side quests, in bringing together Mira's scattered sentient life yourself, it is an inevitable conclusion that you inevitably come to. Another inevitable conclusion you come to on your own? Mira is fucking beautiful. It's almost unanimously agreed to be the best, most impressively designed world in the series, and honestly, I'd put it up there with the best maps in open world gaming, period. Like practically everything else in this game, it stands out from the crowd, and I think a big part of that is because Mira, despite being an eldritch alien planet, is actually the most normal game in the series. Xenoblade 1 and 2 are disguised post-apocalyptic tales set on the bodies and corpses of giants, surrounded by either an endless ocean or a sea of clouds, with Xenoblade 3 being a twisted, unnatural and crumbling amalgamation of the two. By contrast, Mira, despite being a very strange planet, is ironically the only natural planet in the series, and because of that, exploring and appreciating it comes the closest to exploring and appreciating nature in the real world. More than the Bionis, All Rest and Ionios, exploring Mira really captures that nature documentary feel. Now, a part of that is due to the game basically forcing you to explore it, but I think another factor is the fact that this world is a lot less anthropocentric than other games, and I'm not just saying that because of all the aliens running around. I think this less human-focused feeling is due to two big factors. The first, again, being that deprioritization of the main story, which is where a lot of the human conflict tends to happen. This feeling is very much present in the Numbered trilogy. Xenoblade 2 in particular might as well be a political thriller, because they emphasize that main plot so much more. But because that isn't the case in X, exploring the world takes on a significantly different tone. Most of the time, you aren't exploring Mira to progress the main story, you're just exploring Mira simply to satisfy your own curiosity. This kinda ties into the second factor that humans literally aren't native to Mira, so of course it was never made with them in mind. And I think because of that, Monolith Soft had a lot more freedom when it came to the world design. I can only imagine how fun it must have been coming up with all these different biomes and ecosystems that have never been seen by human eyes before. And it feels strange to say that while also saying that it makes the world feel closer to our world than other games. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that humanity in X feels a lot more like a part of the world rather than the focus of it like they are in the worlds of the other games, which are technically all man-made. Of the numbered games, ironically 2 probably comes the close to matching this feeling, since its world was allowed to develop a lot more naturally than the other settings, but the prioritization of the narrative does limit it from going as hard as X does. I've spent a lot of this video talking about how different X is compared to the other games. However, it is still a Xenoblade game, and even if it doesn't play a role in the series' overarching narrative, we'll get to that, it is still connected thematically to the other games. Chief among those thematic connections, human agency and trust in the future. This is arguably the main thesis of the entire series. If you want a better world, you not only need to fight for it yourself, but trust that other people, long after you're gone, will continue to do so. To try and do it all yourself, to try and force the world into something that can easily be controlled, to try and freeze it into a singular idea of perfection, is no better than seeking to destroy it. The future is never something that can be guaranteed. You simply must do your best to build it and trust that it will be safeguarded by those who come after you. That even if there is certainty of further conflict, pain and tyranny, people will continue to make the choice to make something better. I'd say that's one of the big questions asked in X that isn't explicitly called out by name, though I think it is lampshaded pretty heavily at times. I think this theme is in fact given a special kind of weight in X, given that the humanity in this universe is our humanity, or at least one with an identical history and planet, up until the destruction of Earth. Well, I say that, but that doesn't happen until 2054, so I guess if you're watching this in 29 years, thank you very much, and please comment if the Earth's been destroyed yet. Having a humanity with our baggage makes the question of can we trust ourselves to not fuck this place up in the future a lot more pressing and relatable since, well, we did fuck up the last place we called home. This is pretty much the core driving Lao's actions throughout the game. He had hoped that the threat of complete extinction would force people to band together, to stop fighting over everything and really work together like we always could. Aware that not everyone, not even he or his family, could be guaranteed safety, he nonetheless worked to ensure that everyone had a chance. That the white whale could serve as a preservation for all that humanity was, all its diversity and wonder. And when he found out that was never the intention, he broke. Of course he did. I think I would struggle to tell you that I wouldn't.
I knew we couldn't save everyone, of course. Billions of people in that time frame. But a cross-section of races, religions? Yes, it felt like all the usual politics disappeared. People from different countries had to come together. There was no other choice. This was survival. So I signed up.
So what happened?
It was all lies. If you weren't rich, or connected, or part of the first world elite, you got left to die on Earth.
What?
Oh, yes. The only reason people like you and me got on board the White Whale is because they could use our skills, exploit our talents. But everyone else? All those countless souls boxed up in your precious lifehold core? The same elitist bastards that decided they're the only part of humanity worth saving.
This, combined with the fact that everyone's original bodies have already burned away with the Earth, throwing into question what humans even are anymore, makes you wonder if the universe is sending a message that humanity was meant to die with their home. At least that act would be a gesture of true equality, all humanity becoming equal with the passing of their home. The fact that even what should have been an admirable, unifying effort to save the species wasn't safe from the corruption and discrimination that's plagued us for so long really does make you wonder, do we even deserve this second chance? But like it or not, we got it. We have that second chance, and as long as we're alive, we have to keep fighting to do better. That may as well be the Xenoblade mantra, and you can see it manifest in real time through the expansion of NLA. Like I was saying earlier, as you progress through the game, exploring more of Mira, meeting and befriending other lost species, NLA becomes more than the last bastion of humanity. It becomes a shining and hopeful image of a future Miran society. By contrast, you have the Ganglion, which is a coalition of races but one defined by rigid hierarchy and rule of fear, with pure Ganglion ruling over so-called lesser races, using them only as much as they can use them. For how much they hate humanity, they certainly seem to replicate our worst habits. But then you have NLA, which is a coming together of many different races: human, Manon, Klurian, Orphean, Rothian, Prone, Nopon, and what? Nopon. Sorry, all the American accents in this game are fucking with me. But then you have NLA, which is a coming together of many different races: human, Manon, Klurian, Orphean, Rothian, Prone, Nopon. And while this is a coming together of different species within an overwhelmingly human city, run by a human government with a human military, it feels significant that at no point are these other races assimilated or made to change or abandon their ways to fit in. In fact, those who try to force them to do so are often presented as villains, but by and by, New Los Angeles becomes a truly multicultural society, a real mosaic of different peoples and ways of life, all learning and evolving in parallel. And seeing it all, you can't help but have hope. Hope that yes, humanity can be better, that Mira can be the start of something new, representing more than just the loss of a home, but the gaining of a new one. A home comprised of so many different people, each unique and distinctive in their own right, yet all united as Mirans as they walk towards a future greater than any of them could achieve on their own. And that is the meaning of Xenoblade Chronicles X. That should be the end of the script, but there's a lot more video left. It feels like there's something else to say.
The bestie will cease to be, as will this world. Indeed, I have borne witness to it innumerable times before.
Hey, how's it poppin'?
Oh yeah, I did say I'd talk about that. Oh Jesus, I mean it is the definitive edition and all. This is gonna be a big one. Okay, before we get into chapter 13, let's take a bit of a breather. Go grab a snack. I'm gonna get some shameless shilling in and then dive on in. Yeah. Interlude. So I'm sure you're wondering, if Xenoblade X DE came out in March of 2025, why is this video not even in the same year? Well, that's because for the entirety of my YouTube career, I've been working off of this shitty little Surface Pro, and while it's certainly punched above its weight, after 5 years the thing was just not up to scratch anymore, especially when it came to bigger, more ambitious videos like this one, which involved me needing to record over a dozen hours of gameplay. Add to that the general shit life I've kind of been having the past several months, and most recently, needing to deal with another big video, my one about Seiko Giantess dating sim getting age restricted, which took like a whole day to deal with. So yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle getting out a video that already would have taken me a while to do. Part of the reason I have been able to do it regardless is due to everyone who has supported me this past year, including the people who helped donate to get me this new laptop. You can't see it, it's off screen, but it's there, trust me. Of course, an extra big thank you to my patrons, in particular Michael Coolwood, El Begante, Fox, and Josh with parentheses. Also Virgil, who joined after I recorded this segment. God, this video is shambles. And if you want to help me keep making videos like this, there are a few different avenues. Patreon and Ko-fi obviously. You can also buy and stream my music, which includes the original tracks I made for this video, as well as stream and listen to King's Creek, the serialized horror podcast I produce, write, and score. We've got a whole season of Pacific Northwest vibes for you to check out, with season 2 coming out later this summer. Links to all that are in the description. And of course, barring all of that, subscribe, like, comment, and share, especially that aforementioned Seiko video. Really sucked seeing that one get hit, and I'd love to see it recover, after you finish watching this one of course. Speaking of, we should probably be getting back to that. Enjoy the rest of the video. Outside of all the aesthetic changes, quality of life fixes and brand new party members, the biggest addition of the definitive edition is the brand new multi-part chapter that picks up immediately from chapter 12's infamous cliffhanger ending, which I highly recommend you beat before continuing with this video. I think it's important that you finish the game on your own terms and at least begin forming your own impressions before seeking out others. I'll give you a second to close the video. There you go. On the whole, things have been very mixed. I've seen people loving it, saying that it finally completes the game, and after years of not clicking with it, they finally do. And I've seen others saying it literally ruins Xenoblade X's legacy and leaves such a bad taste that it is impossible to enjoy anymore. Me personally, I like to lurk in the shades of grey in between. To sum up my general thoughts, I think Chapter 13 is a phenomenal Chapter 17. I think a reason for the, at times, vitriolic reaction to this chapter is the fact that it kinda comes out of nowhere and doesn't really have much in the way of escalation and build-up. Despite being split into 3 separate acts, making it technically the longest in the game by a decent margin, it still doesn't feel like enough time for the impact of what's happening to really sink in, and thus it's harder to properly immerse yourself the way you have the rest of the game. It doesn't help that the general gameplay design isn't the most interesting. There's a lot of walking from one point in NLA to another for long, back-to-back cutscenes. Volitaris, the teased 6th continent, isn't really a continent so much as it is a big dungeon, though I still found it fun. And the ghosts aren't really as much of a focus as you might hope. Not to mention, in light of the significant raising of the level cap to 99, bringing it in line with the rest of the series, the ghosts and the other enemies in Volitaris don't feel like much of a step up in difficulty compared to the previous chapters. Given that there are now no enemies above the level cap, Volitaris could have been an opportunity to be a real den of monsters, but doesn't feel that much more dangerous than, say, Silverlum or Coldros. There are 2 new super bosses with extremely cool names, but they're both in Mira proper and only accessible during chapter 13, and are thus very easily missable if you're just powering through it, especially since one of them is hiding out in a fucking cave and like, the world is ending, why would I go snooping about a cave? Void, the ancient Sumerian scientist who was the original pilot of the Vita and the Ganglion's founder finally characterized, is, as Xenoblade antagonists go, among the weakest in the series. I imagine this is what people who don't like Mobius see them as. I would give him the edge over Luxor though, who I don't think I've even mentioned once in this video. And perhaps one of the biggest complaints, a lot of the mysteries that were set up in the original release, largely to do with the bizarre nature of Mira as a planet, as well as Cross's weirdness, are either hand-waved with a single line, or just not addressed at all, and given that it ends with the ghosts completely consuming Mira, likely never will. All in all, it feels like Chapter 13 really needed to be an expansion on the same level as Torna the Golden Country or Future Redeemed, and certainly had the ambition to match both of them, but ended up being more comparable in scale to Future Connected, which really wasn't what it needed. Actually, you know what it's like? It's like the Shibuya incident of Xenoblade. Shit's great in concept, but why are we doing late Season 3 stuff halfway through Season 2? It's like if Attack on Titan Season 3 Part 2 happened immediately after the Battle of Trost. It's like if Avengers Infinity War was halfway through Phase 2. It's like if... God... Sorry, JJK Season 2 gets under my skin. All of this isn't to say, however, that I didn't like it. While the content of Chapter 13 could have been built up way better, I still think it is good content. By the time I got over the sudden status quo shift and Van Damme apparently smoking the White Whale's entire cigar stockpile off screen...
Who else would have the stones to turn up for an experimental Skell test flight?
What? You think since we're still walking and talking we shouldn't raise any alarms?
I was able to sink back into things and immerse myself in what was going on like I had been the whole game up to that point. It's definitely a poignant tone, having to leave Mira behind, once again abandoning home to escape existential threats, and definitely casts the rest of the game in a more bittersweet light than we've been used to seeing it, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, I get why people are upset. I was too. I didn't want to leave Mira, and it sucks that we won't get to see more of it, but I don't know. Maybe this is a consequence or even the cause of my interest in stuff like horror, but I don't mind it when a piece of media purposefully invokes negative emotions in me, such as loss or tragedy, so long as it is done with intent and meaning, which I certainly believe can be found here, bringing me to our new, retroactive main villain. Though I just called Void one of the weaker antagonists in the series, he's still a Xenoblade antagonist, and there's always going to be something interesting about those. And personally, I've always been willing to overlook a character being less than entertaining or personable as long as they're engaging and stimulating on a thematic, philosophical, or intellectual level. And the most engaging thing about Void is his relationship with death.
I wish to know death. The fear of death is a powerful motivation in creatures like you. Yea, stronger even than your lust for life. I wish to accept this. Ceasing to be is simple non-existence. But death, when you speak of it, is wrapped up in many a complex emotion. That I wish to know.
Having spent nearly an eternity trapped between dimensions in Volitaris as punishment for summoning the ghosts, the mind-breaking, near-eternal isolation completely destroyed Void's grasp on what life even was. As a consequence, he became fascinated by the concept of death. After all, if so much of life was dedicated to avoiding death, perhaps by understanding it, life could regain some semblance of meaning to him. So, when his mind was freed from its prison, probably thanks to Klaus's fuck-up, he set to work bringing about death on a cosmic scale, hoping to deepen his own understanding of it by inflicting it upon others. As if this weren't enough, wherever he showed up, the ghosts had a tendency to follow, destroying the universes he ended up in, both Elma's original universe and Earth's when he followed her and the Ares there, bringing the ghosts with him. And of course, while he would leave those doomed universes to be consumed, he himself would always slip through the cracks, because although he did all he did to understand death, he refused to do the one thing that would probably help him do so the most: experience it. The name Void suggests a complete absence of anything in terms of character, no emotion, no personality, nothing period. And while Void certainly has the charisma of someone who'd be called that, I believe that Void, whether it is a name he gave himself or was given to him, is in fact not referring to his self, but his other. To him, everything is about as meaningful as a void. The universe, the ghosts, the infinite lives he's taken, humanity, his own worshippers, none of them mean anything to him because they aren't anything to him. The emotion at the core of his being isn't apathy, but selfishness. Selfishness so extreme that it almost evolves into a form of solipsism. The thoughts, the lives, the deaths of other people mean nothing to him because he simply does not care.
As I have stated, my actions are automatic, dictated by necessity. Understanding is not necessary. It is not a question of my ability. I simply do not.
The only thing that has any kind of worth is his own life, even if he no longer understands why, which really makes him a perfect foil for another character who values his own life highly, though for the polar opposite reason. I think the core of Chapter 13 is definitely Al, as well as the two characters who parallel him, Void and the other, who we'll get to. And how you feel about him is definitely going to affect how you see the rest of the chapter. By the way, because I've seen this take floating around, I don't see Al as the main character of Chapter 13 and that he upstages Elma or something. The spotlight definitely expands to include him, but it is still centered on Elma and her inner circle, with Elma honestly getting a lot of much needed characterization, and I say this as someone who was already simping hard for her. Now that I think about it, Uncontrollable is basically her and Al's breakup song. And I mean, if she's single, then, you know. But going back to Al, personally, I love him. He reminds me of Rex in all the best ways, though he's a lot more low-key and casual, unless we're talking pizza. What is it with this game and pizza? The main thing, in my opinion, connecting the two is love and earnesty. Al is open and unashamed that the thing driving him is a love of life and the people around him. He doesn't shout about it from the rooftops, he doesn't make a big deal of it. Surprisingly for a legendary hero, he actually isn't a people person. If anything, he's kind of a weird loner who tells cringe in-jokes with his very few close friends, and you get the sense that he resents his hero status more than anything. But despite this, and despite the loss and trauma he's endured, his love of life hasn't wavered a bit. He's actually a phenomenal foil to Lao the more I think about it. One thing that also struck me was the lack of any insecurities within him. He doesn't hate his hero status because he doesn't believe in himself or thinks he can't live up to it. He just genuinely doesn't like the fuss and doesn't see himself as all that special of a person, being more defined by his actions in the eyes of the wider public than his actual personality. I think this is where some of the Gary Stu allegations I've seen come from, which I think is being reductive. He's not this flawless, perfect guy who solves everything. He gets his ass handed to him by Void on like 3 separate occasions. He's just very self-assured and aware of his limitations and capabilities. He knows who he is and is very comfortable with that, which is another contrast between him and Void, someone with very little sense of self, probably because he doesn't care about anything else. And with no relationships, no point of reference, he doesn't really have anything to define himself against. There is of course the other character that I said acts as a parallel for Al, and that is me. As I said, though Cross is the main player character, you literally have no reason to play anyone else. They are not the protagonist of the main plot, but rather the wider meta-narrative built not just by that plot, but the many side stories told on Mira through the player's exploration of it. Through these actions, getting to know the people of Blade and NLA, solving their problems, becoming a part of their lives, extending a hand to the many alien races and doing the same for them, exploring Mira and her wonders simply for the sake of it, without even knowing he existed, you have been following in Al's footsteps this entire time.
It's the heart. The will to live on through it all. The urge. What it is love. Have you got it in you to love? And I'm not talking marriage vows here. To love all of creation. To embrace the world and all its parts fully.
And what's really cool about Chapter 13 is the way that all of this is folded back into the main plot. For the first time, Cross, rather than simply being an observer to the main plot, becomes an active participant as the game begins acknowledging the work they've put in outside the story up until now. From all the little details, such as Elma acknowledging them as the reason all the other characters are here, said characters including all the optional party members that that only join the cast as a result of Cross meeting them. Said species like the prone, Orpheans, and even Professor B on the white whale too, who only show up thanks to Cross's actions, to Al straight up positioning them as his successor as the big hero, culminating in them piloting the Ares in the final fight against Void. An Ares which, oh by the way, if I forgot to mention, is literally the nexus of the collective will of all life in existence. The game literally ends with you punching the indifferent cruelty of the universe in the face with a giant robot powered by the indomitable human spirit. Close enough. Welcome back, Gurren Lagann. And as someone who did go out of my way to explore Mira between chapters, who did go out of their way to connect and get to know the people of New LA, who made the effort to reach out to all the other alien species, for the game to actually acknowledge that in a way that it didn't before, I can't lie, it was really rewarding, especially as someone who's been playing this game in one form or another for the better part of 10 years. Having to leave Mira sucks. It's a fantastic world to explore, and it's a real shame that we won't get to push its horizon further. I get why so many people are upset with Chapter 13. Like I said earlier, I have plenty of issues with it myself, but god damn it, they always get me. I don't know what it is, but they worked their cursed monolith magic, and though I was definitely worried when Chapter 13 started, by the time it ended, with Cross, my avatar, and all the different people that we had pulled into our orbit, staring hopefully down a new, unknown world, I couldn't help but join them in thinking, maybe this one will be better. Like a newborn baby teething, stepping out of Earth's womb into a new world, new pain but old grievings. No home but back up, not even no memories to ground all my twisted feelings. Blank slate identity, but I would call that a canvas I don't need redeeming. Miran born up, start dreaming. Flower blooming, nothing on my mind except survive. They say my only right's to die. They just offended, I'm alive, armed with a gun and just a knife. I feel the fear of losing life, but then she speaks with just her eyes. Don't worry, I know you can fly, lighter than a lightsaber. Move fast, move quick when it's not safer. In the lion's den she become a tamer. Too fast, too quick for a slow aimer. It's clear I can see she's a true Jaeger. You pull her side, suicide beta. Gotta pull my weight, put in that labor. Do whatever it takes to win her favor.